Well, first, my good afternoon. This is the Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Again, an open line for you today. Beth looking after things for Andy while he's on holiday. Chris is on the phones. Anything at all you'd like to talk about this lunchtime, you'd be very, very welcome. We'd love to hear from you. We've been hearing this morning, as Lewis mentioned, about that increase in social housing rents. They're going up by 5% from April. We've already talked a little bit this week about the high street and whether you're more inclined to shop online perhaps. And speaking of the high street, did you hear the news that Barclays has announced it's closing its Ramsey branch later this year? All that, or perhaps there's something else entirely you'd like to talk about. Whatever it is, give us a call. The number is 66 13 68. You can also text us 166 177, email studio@manxradio.com, or you can find us on WhatsApp. If you just add us to your contacts 07624 166 177, then you can message us for free on there. Thank you very much for your message, Fran, and also to Tam, who said, I still haven't seen a gritter on the bus routes in Williston as yet. Is there a reason for that? Don't know off the top of my head, Tam. We can ask that question and see what the situation is there. We have also heard those unconfirmed reports by police that there is an RTC on Richmond Hill at the moment, so probably just avoid that area if you can at the moment. Now, something I just wanted to mention, since we've been talking about this leucistic hen harrier. This was after Wilf called us on Monday to say he'd spotted a bird in Derby. He wasn't quite sure what it was, but you worked out what it was very, very quickly. And I had an email from the head of conservation and land at the Manx Wildlife Trust, David Bellamy, who wrote an article about this for The Guardian in September 2023. And he sent me a copy of this, and I'll just read a little bit of it to you now. It says, it's not every day I see something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. My sister and niece are over on holiday, and during an amble along the coast, we witnessed what we will perhaps be the greatest ornithological sighting I will ever make from home, a ghostly, all-white hen harrier. To see any hen harrier, David writes, is a sight to behold, even here on the Isle of Man, where we boast some 38 pairs, surely the highest breeding density across all of Britain and Ireland. On a summer walk in the Manx Hills, I would be amazed not to see one, but down along the rocky coast by our home, I rarely see them. To be precise, being among the peculiar type who keeps notes of such things, I have only seen a hen harrier from home 3 times before, despite them breeding only a stone's throw away. All 3 of us saw this leucistic, unpigmented bird, a reassuring fact when you can't quite believe your eyes. It flew slowly along the cliffs in deadly, unnerving silence. Where were the crowds with their long lenses? Aghast, we enjoyed this private, yet all too brief encounter until the bird flew out of view over Laxey, a village of some 1,800 residents, of whom I bet not a single one noticed. How can something so conspicuous be so rarely reported on such a small island? So that was David Bellamy's article in The Guardian in September 2023. I'll post that link actually on the photographs that we put on of the hen harrier early this week, which we put onto our Facebook page. Thank you very much indeed for your email, Sue. A message here from Jason, who says, I have a concern that the head of the Public Service Commission is conflicted in the negotiations in the pay dispute. Rob Callister has made statements about his input and meeting the unions, but should he, as his wife is a civil servant, this is from Jason, his wife is a civil servant and will benefit from this, so should he be allowed to be part of these negotiations, or is this another big mistake? There is a text here from number ending 068, which says, considering the travel disruption this morning, I was puzzled to see 2 gritters on the bungalow webcam. Why, when the road is shut? Again, maybe that is a question that we can ask. We have had now confirmation from police that Richmond Hill from the Mount Murray Junction to Fort North roundabout is closed. The Mount Murray back road is also closed because of the icy conditions, so just be aware of that. Richmond Hill from Mount Murray to Fort North is currently closed. We understand that is because of an RTC. Heard on your news, says John, that council tenants will not be evicted if they don't pay their rent. Surely that's not the case. Do you mean they will not be evicted if they don't pay the gas bill? Let's hear a little bit more about the rent situation, actually. This was something that was on breakfast this morning. Douglas Council does say its social housing tenants will not be evicted from their homes if they can't pay their rent. Devon Watson is the chair of the Housing Committee. He says this 5% increase means more can be spent on maintaining properties and also fixing urgent issues.
So essentially, it's not only a 5% increase, but it is also an increase in the allowance that goes toward maintenance. So we ourselves don't set the rents. These are set by DOI, but we do support the measure. And the reason why we do this is because past rent increases have meant that we've been able to double our response time for repairs. They've gone up from 40% to 80% in terms of getting done within target. And with additional increases, we can take more money and invest more in sort of making sure properties are maintained, making sure that properties are up to standard, and making sure that we can build a lot more properties. We're about to open up 48 new apartments in Williston up to the highest standard, and then we can continue that project of getting that housing waiting list down and making sure that people have decent, affordable housing by getting that additional revenue in. One thing I would also like to note is, yes, while public sector rents are increasing by 5%, this is much lower than the rental increases that many people in the private sector are receiving, and we are trying to provide a much, much better service than some of the worst housing that you see in the private sector, but with much fewer resources, and the only way we can do that is with democratic buy-in. Of all rental income we receive, we've got a specific amount that we're allowed to spend on staff, we've got a specific amount that we're allowed to spend on maintenance, and a specific amount that we're allowed to spend on additional loans. So what these changes and increases mean is that for an authority like Douglas that does have some social housing that is 120, 130 years old, that we can now repair and maintain them. Some empty properties that we do have, we can repair and maintain them, and some of the new housing plans we have, we can actually enact them. We can hire the staff to make that happen, repairmen, handymen, the people who can administer those processes.
That's Chair of Douglas Council's Housing Committee, Devon Watson, talking about the increase in public sector housing rents. Incidentally, any residents who are worried about that increase should contact the Council's Housing Department. They can email housing@douglas.gov.im. And these increases are set by the Department of Infrastructure. It follows a consultation with the 15 local authority housing providers. Douglas Council, obviously, the largest social housing provider on the island. I think the island has around 6,200 social houses in total. So any thoughts on the increase for social housing tenants? Is 5% too much? Is it fair? Or is it not enough? There is a text message here from number ending 762. And I'm going to summarise this without being specific about what's said, but essentially saying that sometimes they drive past social housing estates and notice the big cars that are parked there and the signs that actually maybe finance for some is not really an issue. Is that a fair comment to make? Texter ending 867. The main reason the Douglas shops were busy is the fact it was easy to find a park on the prom, and parking should be allowed there all year. That is from Alan. Again, that's something that we touched on, I think, earlier on in the week. There were some people who feel that actually Douglas Prom should be available to park on all year round. What do you make of that? Would you be happy to see that happen? They won't have more money if people don't pay their rent. Where do they get these people from? Says Des. Okay, 166 177. You can email studio@manxradio.com, or even better, give us a call. Chris is waiting to talk to you. We'd love to chat to you live on air, especially if you've never called us before. We're very friendly. Honestly, most of the time. Chris can be a little bit up and down, but no, I'm always friendly. 66 13 68. Be great to talk to you.
Station, Manx Radio.
When the Mannin Line's not on air, call Manx Radio to leave your opinion for broadcast on 682 631.
But we are here live until 1 p.m. If you'd like to give us a call, 66 13 68. Let's go through some of the texts and emails we've had in so far. Ian says, just listening to the news regarding Douglas Corporation increasing rents makes me wonder if it would have been better use of corporation funds to hold rents rather than increasing them and not waste so much money on the vanity idea to become a city. Well, as I mentioned, the rents are set by DOI, but what do you make of what Ian just said there? I mentioned Barclays closing its branch in Ramsey, and we've had a text saying, I am disgusted with the bank closures. Apparently Lloyds and Ramsey own the building, so the cost of keeping it open is minimal, considering the money that banks make. All this does is have a knock-on effect on other businesses in the town and leave us more vulnerable to scams. I, says this texter, do not trust online banking. Ian says, I think the loss of high street banks in the Isle of Man is a serious blow, particularly to the older community here. Lots of us older people prefer to have a bank to call into and to deal with a person when all you seem to get told these days is to use the app. It's a definite step backwards. Long past time the Isle of Man government should make the post office into a Manx bank. Isle of Man Bank is run from Jersey and Gibraltar, for goodness sake, says G. Andy says, regarding the Douglas social housing rents, did I hear Devon Watson correctly saying he's going to use some of the extra rental income to hire more staff? Surely he's just empire building. That won't help people on the housing waiting list. If the pavements are slippery, this is from Sue in Ballaugh, and obviously it was a little bit slippery this morning, certainly around some of the estates. So here's a tip from Sue. If the pavements are slippery and icy, then some people on social media are saying put your socks on over your shoes. Sue says, I don't know how effective this is, but it could be worth a try. Anything is worth a try. So if we start a trend here on the Isle of Man, hey. With regards to gas, and we might come to this interview in just a couple of minutes, Eric Corkish and Barry Murphy are dedicated local citizens who challenge the unfairness of local fuel issues. How come people like this never get awards? I wish the Isle of Man would recognise people who step up for the rest of us. So actually, I think when it comes to certain awards, it's people who can nominate them. Let's go to the lines now and join Bonzo. Good afternoon, Bonzo.
Hello, yes. Talking about the anniversary of Solway Harvester.
Yes.
And there's a very excellent photo essay, and I think it's still available as a book, but maybe also on his website, by the noted Manx photographer Phil Neen.
Oh, yes.
Solway. So I point people to that. There was a fantastic excuse me, I'll put them on rehearsal for you think. Exhibition of the works going into that book in the Villa Marina a long time ago. It was about 2007, I think, 2008. But yes, I point people to that. It's an excellent photographic work.
Yeah, and it's poignant remembering it's 25 years on, Bonzo. We've talked a lot about this. We have another special programme here on Manx Radio at 5:30 tonight. And it seems, as I'm looking across Douglas Bay and seeing the flat, calm water, just incomprehensible what happened, really.
Well, yes, and remembering also the actual wreck of the Harvester, which, of course, in Douglas Harbour for some years after it was raised, and then it was placed back, I think, in its site after the inquiry, as a memorial and grave.
Mm.
But secondly, what I really meant to phone about was this marvellous travel website called travelpug.com.
Okay.
Right, and you might want to just pull it up on your on your screen, and the feature that they've done on the Isle of Man.
Right, I'm quickly having a quick search. Carry on.
Yeah, right. And the feature, various descriptions, of course, with a variety of photographs. The photographs bear absolutely no relation to the Isle of Man whatsoever. And there's a particularly good one, I think, of the of Bride with its alpine horn players.
Did you say Travel Pug, P-U-G?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm struggling to find it. I mean, this is the thing, though, Bonzo, isn't it? We know we can't trust everything we see on social media and on websites and internet and whatever.
Oh, yes, but this is this is obviously done by some very confused AI that thinks Sulby is Ramsey Harbour. And things like that. It's brilliant. Go and see it. It is. So as I say, I've only just really stopped laughing, and now I'm going to be starting to laugh again. So for a bit of entertainment argument today. I recommend listeners go and seek it out.
Right, we will have a look, Bonzo. Thank you very much. We're always in need of a good laugh, aren't we? Brilliant.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. That was Bonzo there. The local high street felt busy due to the boat not sailing on the run-up to Christmas, says texter ending 148. Shouldn't local authority housing rents be increased in line with whatever the wage rise is given to local authority workers? To me, says texter ending 705, that would be common sense. Texter ending 681 says, if they do not have to pay rent, I will not be paying my rents in Onken. And in brackets it says, sent with loud effect. So that was received very loudly. Texter ending 659. This statement is sending out the wrong message. The taxpayer is already losing £6.5 million a year by subsidising social housing. Now it will increase even more. This is a text from 247 that says, I have a health condition. I live in Union Mills and my health condition doesn't allow me to walk too far. So even if I were to get a bus and wanted to go to the bank in particular, it would take me a long time and I would suffer a heart attack. So online banking is the best thing for me that's ever happened. I don't even have to leave my living room to pay utility bills and everything I buy is delivered to my door. And I think that's a great example, isn't it? Is the fact there's always two sides to a story, and for all the times that we moan about things going online, actually for somebody in that situation it really is a lifesaver and opens up so many opportunities. I am disappointed the rent has gone up so much, says texter 640. Government, we are now struggling and want to spend £137,000 in a path by the Manor Hotel put in to get houses finished and fill them instead of being empty so long. Disappointed ratepayer. That's Sean in Douglas. Text ending 768, this is S, says, I think the criteria for social housing is generous. A couple earning £50,000 between them is not on the breadline. Working people can also claim employed person's allowance to help with things like childcare or even boost their income. Text ending 238 says, I thought you said wear your underwear on the outside when it's snowing. I feel so silly now finding out it's only your socks. I wish I knew about this before I went to Tesco. Terry says, it's high time someone in our government got all these main street banks together with a view to forming a bank hub in our smaller towns. What do you make of that idea? Is that something that you would welcome in your area? Paul says, take a look at the Isle of Man Court Civil Summary and Small Claims section. There are dozens of cases of people not paying rent. Some have been on this for several years, so it looks like you will not be made homeless if you don't pay your rent. The trouble is several of these people should be able to pay, but they choose, says Paul, not to. Again, I guess we're not ever aware of people's individual circumstances. This is Des saying, was I multitasking or was I just not listening to Bonzo? I was attempting to multitask, but I didn't do very well because I didn't find that website. I might have to get him to send me the link. Richard said, Bonzo isn't quite right about the Solway Harvester. She was not put back on the seabed as a memorial. She was broken up in Douglas by the Laxey Towing Company, and that was under contract to the Isle of Man government. And this is from Ulrich, who says, as a radio enthusiast, I listened to your broadcast and would like to send you a reception report about your transmission. First this morning, later on midday, enjoyed the music you played from the 60s and 70s, which I usually only hear on YouTube videos on demand. I'm also looking forward, he says, to your programme on Radio Caroline North, scheduled for this Saturday. I was raised up with Radio Caroline, which was not easy to listen to in Germany at that time, and I later listened to other pirate stations. So that's lovely, isn't it? And again, we're always surprised, really, at how far the reach sometimes of Manx Radio goes and where people are listening to. So it's lovely to hear from you. G says, where are the new businesses and workers that the Isle of Man government are pinning our economy on? All they're doing is squeezing the pips out of current workers. And this is text ending 328 that says, people don't know what the Isle of Man really looks like with steam packet fares. Basically a day away with a car, arriving Wednesday midnight, departing Friday afternoon for an essential appointment, £278. This is shocking compared to other shipping companies who charge massively less for far greater distances. Again, we have spoken to the steam packet. This is raised constantly, isn't it? People talk about the cost of travel to and from the Isle of Man. There's a lot more involved, I guess, and you can book cheaper fares if you book them earlier on, and so I guess it's weighing up being able to plan far ahead as opposed to sort of maybe going a little bit nearer the time. Kim says, regarding Barclays closing their branch in Ramsey, I would urge people to remain positive. I'm sure they'll adjust to the change. I've hardly set foot in my bank in the past 20 years until a few months ago following the death of my elderly mother. This was, I hasten to say, not Barclays, but the experience was horrendous. The lack of service and competence was breathtaking. That is from Kim. Chris has found me that link to the travel website that Bonzo was referring to, so I'll take a look at that in just a moment. Remember, you can also get in touch with us on WhatsApp as well, 07624 166 177. Just put us into your contacts. I heard on the radio that Tesco customers on the Isle of Man benefited the most from their discounts and vouchers compared to the UK. Surely this confirms the Isle of Man residents are hoarders and overbuyers. Would you put yourself into that category? Are you one of those people who just has a stock full of things just in case? 15 individual housing authorities is ridiculous for an island of this size. 4 would be plenty to reduce cost and administrative burden. Time to rationalise local government, says Dave. And that, again, you know, I've worked here for a number of years now, and this has come up time and time again. But where are the ideas to actually make it happen? You know, we all seem to think, or many people seem to think it's a good idea that things need to be restructured and whatever. So why isn't somebody stepping up and doing it? If it was that easy, it clearly isn't, is it? John says, if corporation tenants don't have to pay their rents, would it be okay for us private house owners not to pay our annual rates? And when is infrastructure going to learn, says texter ending 238. After seeing numerous accidents and people falling hard to the ground, it's ridiculous. I think it should be addressed in Tynwald when we have what we have in place for the severe weather conditions, how much gritting sand we have in reserve, how many drivers we have who can operate the vehicles. I say this have been out again this morning and exactly the same, hardly any grit on the roads and in places nothing. Have the gritters been told to adjust the sprinklers of grit as we are low on stock? So frustrating for the people on the island, and thousands has been wasted on project and benches that we don't need on the prom. Again, I should probably say that the main routes, certainly the main routes that I've seen, have been gritted this morning. They were all passable. Obviously, it was a bit slow because people are out and about. And it's mainly, isn't it, in some of the estates. And I know some of them actually don't have necessarily have salt boxes. And I think, and I stand to be corrected, that is only if they are not yet complete. I know certainly somebody who lives in an estate that's not finished yet, and so they didn't have a salt box. So that was where there were particular issues for them. Let's go to the lines and join Howard now. Good afternoon, Howard.
Good afternoon, Beth. Just saying about your salt boxes, I'm living up at Annika here, and I've just been up to our salt box to put some on the paths, and it's all fresh salt that's in there, so somebody's obviously looking after them, and the box was full. So, just put a bit of salt down on the paths, the footpaths outside the house. But what I was ringing for, this programme tonight, I think it's, Chris said, it's from the Solway Harvester.
It is, yeah, at 5:30.
I remember that night very well. But one of the things I have noticed, in front of the building you're in, there's a block of apartments there. And on the seaward side of that, there's a footpath goes round and comes back out on the other side. There is a plaque, and it's set in the ground commemorating the tragedy.
There is, yes. Somebody actually sent us sorry to interrupt you, Howard, but we were talking about this the other day when John was talking about his special programme on Tuesday, and we were just wondering what sort of state it was in, and somebody actually did send a photograph, and it's looking pretty good, actually. It's held up to the elements fairly well.
Yes, that's at this time of year, but I've been up there several times as, I do voluntary up at the Camera Obscura, and it's always a fight between the council and the DOI, who's going to cut the grass and who's going to maintain the area around there. And on numerous occasions, and this plaque, it's set in the ground, and apparently it's a piece of stone that has come from, I think it was Whithorn, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. It's a piece of slate, stone, granite, and that's engraved on, and it was placed there. But in all honesty, there's nothing really saying what it was there for. And the fact that the area is badly maintained around there, so anybody that's walking around, particularly visitors, and you do get quite a lot of them walking around, There's nothing, it's not well maintained at all around there, and it's a shame because the crew on board there were all young men, and Donald Gellan, he done the right thing. He made a brave decision. We're going to raise the ship, and they did. And those lads, all sons, were able to be taken home to their families, which was a great thing. But I wish somebody would actually take a decision to look after that plaque up there, because if you stand and you read it and you look out to sea, you're virtually looking out onto the area where the ship went down.
Yeah, well, Howard, as I say, texter ending 338 sent me a photograph, and actually it looks incredibly well kept from this photograph, which I assume was taken recently. And I'll just read to you what it says on the stone. To the Manx community, in grateful thanks for their compassion and generosity following the loss with all hands as Solway Harvester, 11th of January 2000. And as you say, there's the Scottish flag and a Manx flag on there, a little piece of Whithorn in the Isle of Man.
That's right. Yep. Oh, I've seen it many times, and I've been up there and I've cut the grass round it myself. But you do have a job. If you ring up the DOI, they say that's the council. If you ring up the council, they say that's the DOI. There's book passing, but that is a very important. And as you say, it's 25 years. It doesn't seem that long, but obviously it is. But it is a memorial to some lads, and it is on behalf of the Manx government and the Manx people. So it should be maintained continuously and the area maintained continuously.
All right, Howard.
So, as I say, it's just one of those things that tend to get neglected because they're hidden away in a sense.
Well, fortunately, as I say, that photograph, which was taken in the recent days, shows it's actually in pretty good nick. But yeah, I take your point.
Good. Well, that's what I like to hear, because that is a conservation area all up around there, but nobody seems to know what they're doing with it.
Oh, all right, Howard. Thank you very much indeed.
Take care.
Take
Bye
care.
now.
Speak to you soon. That was Howard there. We've been sent some photographs of the Mount Murray back road, which apparently is blocked solid. This texter says police are still sending people that way. We know there has been the RTC on Richmond Hill, and we did have an update from police to say Richmond Hill from the Mount Murray junction to Fort North roundabout is currently closed because of that RTC, but they did also say that the Mount Murray back road was closed because of the icy conditions as well. Some more of your texts here. Text ending 969 says, get Aldi over here and there'll be fewer people shopping in Tesco. Well said, Dave, regarding local authorities. For up to a week a year when it occurs, government will not salt smaller roads. The future is DIY. We have to do more for ourselves. But again, isn't it prioritising, isn't it? It's like, we know that the main routes are the most crucial to salt. Do we not just expect when it's days like this and we know it's been really icy, there is only so much, certainly, that the DOI can do. And I've seen them out and about at all hours in recent days. So we can't have everywhere done, surely. Is that too much to expect? Victoria says, I like the idea of alpine horn players on the Isle of Man. I think you should get one free when you buy a bag of spuds. I'm game for that one, Victoria. Every salt bin, says texter ending 280, has an individual number and a phone number, so you can report it when it gets low. Thank you very much indeed for that information. G says, has Mr Cannon made his statement of where Isle of Man government is going to save £10 million? Speaking of saving and money and budgets, we know that's coming up in February. Is there anything in particular you'd like to see in there? Francis says, I wonder if anything could be done about government employees in social housing who own property that they rent out tax-free. I think that might have to be filed under... Is that really true, Francis? Do we know that for certain? I went to the Eastern Amenities site this morning, says Peter, with scrap metal. The operator wanted to inspect it first. He deemed it was from a fridge or washing machine and they can no longer accept it. Not the operator's fault, says Peter, only carrying out instructions from somebody with no common sense. Sadly, the lack of common sense will destroy this island. I guess, again, that will go down to what the regulations are and where it can be processed and taken. So, yeah, thank you for that, Peter. Sue says maybe there should be volunteers to use sandboxes on estates. Not everyone is able to lug sand to their property, as sometimes there are only a couple of boxes on a big estate. Yeah, thank you very much, Sue. Yeah, should we all be a little bit more neighbourly and sort of look after our own areas and just make sure that people who do have mobility issues are okay when they're out and about? I totally agree with Howard, said Simon in Union Mills. I was awake on a night shift that night, that tragic night when the Solway Harvester went down, and listening to Manx Radio was almost like a tragic play being played out. The site should be maintained. We have an affinity with Scotland, and we definitely have an affinity with those boys who died under such a tragic time. I remember it well. Thank you very much indeed, Simon. Texter ending 346 says, I'm very sad about Barclays closure in Ramsey. It will be a big struggle to get to Douglas. The staff at Ramsey have looked after me very well. Let's just give you more details about that. They have announced at Barclays that they're going to close their branch in Ramsey later this year. They say it's a difficult decision to shut the Parliament Street outlet. It's coming up on the 11th of April. Barclays say customers will have access to services when they need them, whether at the Douglas branch or via digital services. Now, last year, Ramsey's opening hours were reduced following what Barclays called a review of its services and the digital options available. This does come, of course, for Ramsey less than 2 months after Lloyds Bank announced it too would be closing its branch in the town, and that does leave Isle of Man Bank as the last remaining physical bank branch in Ramsey. I would never shop in one of the local supermarkets, given our island sustainability, for free without conditions to safeguard local supply. Government is a disgrace, says texter ending 399. Dave says, we've never had a salt box in Sunnydale Avenue. I asked for one 10 years ago and didn't even get a reply. I'd probably try again, Dave, you never know. But actually, I think, they're really good, actually. If you 850000 is the Ellerslie depot. I know that obviously because my dad used to work there. And if you give them a call, they are so helpful. And I think maybe they would be able to sort something out for you. Here's one that might get you going. Get rid of the TT and save millions, says texter ending 376. What do you think about that? This is from Nick. I can count on one hand how many salt boxes are around Port Erin, and that's not many. I don't think I've ever seen any in any of the estates. Again, that's probably something that actually, if you get in touch, maybe salt can be provided, because actually there's another message here from 846 that says the salt boxes are for the roads, not people's private paths, which is a fair point there. The Christmas lights were still shining away, apparently, according to Derek, in Laxey yesterday afternoon, on the very day commissioners were meant to be discussing how desperately short of money they are. You can vote in new commissioners, but if you don't change who's managing the place, Garth will never get back to how well run it was before it was created. Let's go to the lines and join Eddie now. Good afternoon, Eddie.
Hiya, Beth. You all right, love?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm sound as a pound.
Good.
And I just want to add to the, well, there wasn't many good comments about the gritting, but where I live, I'd like to say a big thank you to farmers. Whenever we get bad weather like this, I've seen Maurice Cool and everybody in the vicinity out all day just clearing the roads. They need to get to the livestock, I know, but they also do it for the locals as well. So a big thank you to them.
Oh, that's lovely, Eddie. And I think sometimes that's it, isn't it? We're so quick to criticise and so quick to see the negative, but actually there are amazing things happening all over the island, and certainly from your point of view, the farmers there, it's great to give them a mention.
Well, you sparked that off by saying, like a neighbourhood looking after each other, by anybody who's able to just go out and grit some of the pavements and things like that. Well, that's exactly the same as what happens up here. It's a community. It's gone from some city places, I know that, but try and create it again. And also, while I'm on, that was a marvellous piece by David Bellamy earlier on.
Oh, wasn't it lovely? Honestly, I will post. I know you might not have not everyone's got access to social media and whatever, but I will post the link to that because it was beautifully written, and I think just really captures the essence of what it must have been like to see that bird.
Well, it sums up what I was actually saying the other day about the wildlife on the Isle of Man. I wish the actual government would. I mean, I look at it in this way. We have an asset here that could be way over the top of anything else. We could have, if we just said, for instance, we're not going to touch any of our environment here and keep it, we'll have people coming here to come and see it. We do now. The government keep forgetting about the twitchers, the hikers, the walkers, the cyclists, everything.
To be fair, though, Eddie, I'm just going to, play devil's advocate here. I mean, we are recognised as a UNESCO biosphere. That is something that the government talks about a great deal.
Yeah, well, let's keep it that way then. That's what everybody is trying to say. But as we pointed out, there is nothing green about the plans that they're going ahead with or trying to go ahead with. Incidentally, if somebody could come on and tell us when they're actually going to planning for this monstrosities, that would be a help for us. If somebody could come on and let us know when it's going to planning.
All right, Eddie. Well, I'm sure as soon as we have those details, we will let you know. But thank you very much indeed for calling again.
Pleasure, Beth.
Take care. Speak to you soon.
Yeah, bye, love.
Bye-bye. That was Eddie just talking there about how lovely certainly some areas of the Isle of Man still are, with that community feel, people looking out for their neighbours. Jonesy's been in touch to say, I called 2 weeks ago to the DOI and our salt box was refilled, and he's literally just taken a photograph looking out the window. They're refilling it again. So as I say, I mean, DOI staff, certainly from that point of view, if you get in touch with those people, and loads of them out and about doing all that gritting work, and just because sometimes we don't necessarily see it on a particular road doesn't mean it's happening. Neil in Douglas says, get rid of the consultants at Nobles on over £250,000 a year. OK, Neil, so I guess then the question would be, would you always be prepared to go across to the UK if you needed consultant treatment? Texter ending 280 says, everyone crying about the lack of salt boxes. Phone up, report it, the DOI will call round and assess the area and then follow it up. Dave says the short-sighted contributor who said get rid of the TT and save money needs to speak with all business owners' employees that would go bankrupt and lose their jobs. The last I heard, says Dave, TT makes in excess of £40 million. Charles says, I'm very sorry to hear that Barclays in Ramsey is closing so soon after Lloyds. In the UK, smaller towns have been trying banking hubs. The big 5 banks have a day each. I think they should try this over here for Ramsey, Peel and the South. Otherwise, there will only be bank branches in Douglas. What do you make of that idea? Of course, Isle of Man Bank has their mobile banking van when it's operational. That goes out and about around the island. Is that something maybe to consider? Texter ending 775 says the grit is full of antifreeze which causes more harm than good. It washes into waterways, killing wildlife and could affect our water supply. It gets on pets' paws. It's toxic to all and we should not use it. I can just let you know now that Richmond Hill is open. Services have returned to normal routes. So Richmond Hill, after that earlier RTC, is now open. We've got a message here from texter ending 601 that says UK requirement that closing banks should pass business to post office as a community hub and new incentive in government to rejuvenate the area shopping is for government help subsidise. Sorry, I think maybe I'm not reading that properly, but post offices and the shops around would also benefit by footfall, such as Prospect Terrace and Windsor Road. Postal rates will continue to increase as people can't afford postage. The Isle of Man government needs to create an alternative which could encompass a variety of products similar to postal banking vehicles. As a pensioner, I do not want money paid into the bank as they are closing and not always in the local area. I prefer cash over counter as cash is king. So is the new thinking the community hub, which would provide access to several services. So that is an idea that has been suggested quite a few times, actually. Do we just want to have these central hubs where maybe banks or the post office or whatever, they all have a day each? You know what day your bank might be in there. Would that solve an issue? Texter ending 238 says, I'm not criticising drivers. The problem is, as usual, too many pen pushers sat on their hands in the office. This is regard to gritting, I think. You're only as good as your army, and our boots on the ground are disappearing and not getting replaced. 66 13 68, still a few minutes if you'd like to have a chat on air. You can text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. Neil says, I waited over a year to see a consultant, so perhaps they actually should work for their massive salaries. But again, Neil, I guess, obviously I'm playing devil's advocate again, but you don't know who else is on that waiting list and what they're waiting for ahead of you. It's really tricky. Banking hubs would be a fantastic idea. Yes, please, says 068. And at Springfield Avenue, with the grass area in the middle, the pavements are like skating rinks. We have one salt box at the top of the road entrance opposite Saddle Mews where the sun shines when it comes out, drying the top paths. The lower paths stay frozen 24 hours a day and they have no bin. When the DOI was told about this, they said, go over to the bin and get the salt 150 yards away. And that's not really possible when you're in your 70s. Let's go to the lines and join Viv now. Good afternoon, Viv.
Hello, Beth.
How are you doing?
All I'm saying is we've got all these banks closing throughout the island. What are our government doing about it?
What can they do about it, Viv, do you reckon?
Well, surely to God they've got some say in the financial thing. They have to have licenses for all these things. Are they not interested in what the public wants?
I suppose
There's an election in a year's time. They'd better start remembering.
Well, I think the thing is, Viv, I guess, I mean, when we certainly talk about Barclays, they say that they have done a review of their services and all of the options that are available digitally. So I guess if a bank or a business makes...
But not everybody wants to be digitally. I'm being quite honest. There's an awful lot of people that don't want to. I know where I live here, there are people that want to go into the bank to get their cash or put money in, but they can't do it now because the banks are all closing. And I think it's disgusting. We live on an island, we pay our dues, so therefore, why can we not have what we want? The Isle of Man Bank isn't even Manx any longer. That's run from Jersey or Guernsey.
It is a tricky one though, Viv, isn't it? Because I think at the end of the day, these are businesses, if we're talking about banks as a business, and they review their operations, and there's only so much say, I would suggest, that government can have in forcing them to stay open.
Well, why don't they try supporting them to have what you've just been talking about as little hubs or an odd day in the week or something? But they are just completely silent. I mean, so where do they invest all their money? Off the island, or far away. But something should be done for the Isle of Man. Never mind what the government wants. Sorry, I'm very annoyed about all these things.
That's all right, Viv. That's what we're here for. But yeah, we hear what you're saying. And lots of people seem to think this idea of having these hubs would be a good idea.
Well, didn't Onken used to have a hub at one time? They shared with somebody else.
I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look into that.
I can remember something about it. But, I mean, say, Lloyd's Bank in Ramsey, which I deal in, and it's a case of you usually got to wait when you go in because there's so many people in, and they say they're not getting the business. It's absolute rubbish.
All right, Viv.
It's somebody sitting behind a desk in a posh office saying, oh, we'll get rid of this today. And I'm sorry, I think the time is going to come when we'll need them all again.
All right, Viv. Thank you very much indeed for calling. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care. That was Viv there. Brian in Port Erin has contacted us to say, just to add to the positive comments about the Isle of Man, a big thank you to the staff on Ward 14 at Nobles Hospital. I had an operation on my face yesterday and Lucy and the girls could not have looked after me any better. Many, many thanks. Thank you very much indeed, Brian. It is really lovely to have these little positive notes to throw out there as well. It's about time the government hired somebody to look into starting an Isle of Man bank. They are clueless to be left to do anything about it by themselves. Something needs sorting. Did I hear right? Someone wants the government to run a bank. They can't look after our taxpayers' money, says texter there. This is a text from 113 that says, we'd like to say thank you to our wonderful neighbours, Olivia and Steve. They came round this morning and put grit on our paths, also brought our bin out. They are a great young couple. They are so kind to us oldies. So you see, that spark of community spirit is absolutely alive and well here on the Isle of Man, which is great to hear. And it's lovely to hear it and share it on the Mannin Line. Text ending 472 says, can't banks not just amalgamate and cut costs, make everyone happy in one building, for example, where the Isle of Man Bank is now, or Barclays and Ramsey, then people could talk to other people from all the banks. In reaction to your recent caller, cash is king, says text ending 247. It's only king if it has a throne, and the thrones are being removed, so we need to move on. My utility bills and my incapacity benefit and rent are now paid online, so I really don't see what the problem is. That is from Simon. Regarding the bank closures, the Department for Enterprise commissioned a report into access for cash in 2022, says Muriel, but there was no follow-up. I'm going to chase that one, Muriel. Let's see where we get with that one. All banks will close, says Des, and force everyone to go digital because there's more control and information on how you spend your credit. Banks, says text ending 795, are a victim of their own success. Banks wanted people to use online banking and mobile banking apps, which in turn reduced the need for people to go into the bank. Sean says banks closing mean very difficult for people who don't do online banking. Government should step and help. Oh, hang on. The government of the island doesn't care about the public. They just cost us millions. Is that really true, Sean? Another case coming up which is going to cost the public purse £90 million. The worst government ever. Total failure to the island. Absolute shambles, being paid big salaries. Again, it's just one of those things, isn't it? Everybody has their own perception on how situation is depending on your own experience, I guess. But it seems to me that sorry, I've just lost that one there. It seems to me people in charge of everything are young, and as long as they are okay, that's the end of the matter. But they must remember that they will be old one day. Sarah P. in Onken says, there used to be a Barclays counter facility in the post office in Onken. Thank you very much for clarifying that, Sarah. The pound note, the dollar, the euro is all doomed. The government's continuously debating their currency. Bitcoin, says this texter, will be the next currency. And I think we've got to all the texts and emails that have been sent in so far. So thank you very much indeed. Remember, if you think about something when we're not on air, you can use our out of hours number. That's 682 631. And you can leave a message on there. We can either play it out on the show, or as I say, if there's a question or something that you'd like us to follow up, we can always do that. We can't always do it straight away. Obviously, it takes a little bit of time sometimes, so we have to ask the questions to the right people. And I will post, as I say, that article link that David Bellamy sent me about the leucistic Hen Harrier. Absolutely loved that story this week, and all the comments and reactions on the photographs that Peter Christian took, which are phenomenal. That they've been absolutely brilliant to read through. So if you are out and about and on a day like this, can you imagine spotting her? It would just be fantastic, wouldn't it? Be great to keep up to date with the progress, and I'm going to speak to David Bellamy hopefully at an arranged time and find out more about that bird in particular. And also I know there are hopes that she will maybe breed, so we'll keep you posted on that one. Thank you very much indeed to Chris Quirk, who has been on the phones for us today. That is all from the Mannin Line for today. Phil Gaughan is going to be here with you from midday tomorrow, so do join him there. And it's another open line. Again, anything at all you'd like to talk about, 66 13 68 is the number to call. Go over to the Manx Radio website. You can check out all our top stories on there. We've also got the newscast section where you can hear the longer interviews that we don't have time to play in full on air. There's also a good news section as well. So if you haven't checked that out, do go and look. It's a little bit of positivity, which I think sometimes we all need. So thank you very much indeed. Christy D is coming up next with 1 to 3. And then it's Alex in the afternoon at 3. I will be back with you at Update at 5. Whatever you're doing this afternoon, take care if you're out and about in the roads. And I'll talk to you later.